Yeah, they have a tendency to be sticklers about sitting in chairs. The boss doesn't come up here often, but we are into section 2.4, 5. Well, 4 and 5 right now. We won't cover. We've already did presentations fairly well, and we'll do some more presentations. But we want to learn some things about writing, because writing in the technical fields is very different than writing in your English class. It just is. And unfortunately, they don't really teach what you need to learn in your English classes, what we need to learn here. So, let's see here. Did I start my recording? Apparently I did. Okay, good. So, section 2.4, research skills. The most standard kind of approach to research that I've seen from students is, it used to be, before the internet really took off, it used to be just go out and check out everything you can possibly find in the library and start reading through it and take notes or make copies of everything that you could possibly use. And then when you're all done with that, you sit down and you kind of just have this huge amount of information. You're trying to sift through it and put together something from the information. Okay, fine, whatever. Nowadays, it tends to be almost the exact opposite. We get online and we search for exactly what we need. And we usually get something that points exactly to what we need. And there are problems with both of those approaches. What is the problem with having all these tons of information from, like, every bit of information you could possibly find related to your subject? What's the problem with that?
It's too broad for your
So why is that a problem? You could whittle it down.
Because it might not be directly related and can lead to tangents within the paper.
Okay, it can lead to tangents. When you're writing something or preparing a presentation or whatever you're researching for, even if you're researching to start a project, if you've got too much information, it can lead you astray. It really can. What's another problem that might come up from having too much information?
It's really time consuming to go down and find out what you need.
That's probably the biggest problem right there, because time consumption leads to tangents anyway. If you spend too much time on something, you're going to forget what the heck you're doing multiple times. And you have to refocus yourself, and you're just wasting time. And time is money. Time is efficiency. Time is everything, really. Your time is one of the few things out there that we can't just reclaim all the time. It's not recyclable. So time is a big issue, a really big issue when it comes to this. Effort, of course, comes along with time, and that's another problem. So you really want to be efficient with what you do and get it done right. Now, in some cases, that means that you can actually plan ahead. You can actually say, well, I know what I'm trying to accomplish with this paper. I know what the end result, what I want it to be. So you can tailor your research to that, and that's fine. You can focus on that. Sometimes not so much. Sometimes you have to go a little bit broad because you're not sure where it's going to end up. And so there's a balance there, right? What's the problem with focusing too much? What's the problem with the other end of the spectrum, where you go out and you search Google for exactly what you want? Let's say that you're doing your presentation for this class on biomechanical engineering, and you go and search biomechanical engineering. What is biomechanical engineering, or something like this? Let's say that's actually what you actually do. What is biomechanical engineering? What are you going to get when you search something like that?
Easier to find an answer you want instead of a true answer.
What is biomechanical engineering? Let's see what we get. I literally get a page that is titled, "What is biomechanical engineering?" Right? Essentially, I get somebody answering the exact question I'm asking. But I may not have even been asking that question. It may have just been something that just popped into my head. Well, I need to do a report on biomechanical engineering. I'm going to ask, what is biomechanical engineering? But maybe I need to know what is the history of biomechanical engineering. Maybe I need to know what are the different fields you can go into with biomechanical engineering. Maybe I need to know what kind of education you need in biomechanical engineering. And this thing may not provide it. But immediately I may say, well, this is what I need because it answered my question. We're very used to, sorry, just a second, we're very used to having computers at our fingertips to search so much information that there's almost certainly something out there that has exactly the answer to the question that we just kind of randomly threw in there. Yeah, go ahead.
Gives you an answer, trying to build on what you're saying, gives you an answer, but it might not be the answer to the question that your teacher wants in your report.
Yeah, or whatever, you know, it may be a answer, but it may not be a complete answer. It may not be all of the answers that could come together to make a complete answer. You know, there's much more to a question than an answer. Okay, there's a story, there's a history, there's a this, there's that. There's just nothing is one-dimensional, but the internet has a tendency to be very one-dimensional, especially in those first few hits on Google. Okay, the Google search engine is by no means an engine that is going to give you the best answer, and it is also by no means an engine that's going to give you a correct answer. You could get a web page that is completely wrong, and it's not going to give you an unbiased answer. Okay, even within you have an innocuous question like, "What is biomechanical engineering?" I guarantee you, it is going to be slanted with some kind of political leaning, some kind of social leaning, some kind of this, some kind of that, because it's actually written into their code. It's written into their code to promote certain things that are advantageous to their personal company. And every search engine is the same way. There's no search engine out there that's not tainted in some way by bias. And so you may or may not get what you need in those first few hits. I'm not saying this to say that the internet is a bad place to do research. It's a great place to do research, but you have to be aware of what you're getting and how you're getting it. I've heard many teachers say, well, if it says .org or .edu, it's a good source. That's a lie. It's just a plain simple lie. Anyone can buy a website with .org or .edu. Anyone. Literally. There's no law that says only schools can have edu. Only trusting people, only people we can trust can have .org accounts. It's just not true. Anybody can buy them. It doesn't take any special thing to do anything with. There's no laws governing it. They're trying to govern it. They're just not doing a very good job. So it doesn't really mean one thing or the other, you know, the suffix on your website or whatever else. And I've also heard teachers say, well, Wikipedia is a terrible resource. Why? I think Wikipedia is the best encyclopedia that has ever been written in history by far. I don't think there's one that even comes close. It's put every other encyclopedia company out of business, first of all. So there are no more encyclopedias on the planet, really. You have a hard, I mean, I suppose there are some companies online that have encyclopedias, but they're not anywhere near as complete or comprehensive as Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a great resource. I highly recommend you start with Wikipedia. Start there and see what you can find. And why is it so great? How does Wikipedia work?
It uses people's need to correct other people.
Yeah, it's competition, right? It's know-it-alls, right? And if you have enough know-it-alls, eventually you'll get the truth. That's just a plain and simple fact. Eventually, you'll get the truth. And it is, I mean, it's commonly thought that just anybody can go ahead and post on Wikipedia. That's not quite true. It is refereed, and it is, I don't know exactly the process for it, but they do have a way of making sure that the information on there is not just being, you know, just randomly changed by whoever. Right? There's a fair amount of refereeing going on, a fair amount of checking sources and data going on. And like I said, I don't know the details, but it is done. Sure, there is some misinformation there. Sure, there is bias there as well. There's always going to be bias. You'll never get away from it. So research is as much a search for truth as it is a search for information, no matter where you're getting your information This is particularly true when you're going into the science technical kind of fields, because it is often thought, and this is something that's preached by just almost everybody, and it's just ridiculous how many people think this is true, but it's often thought that science is about truth and that science is about fact. It's not. It just isn't. It's a lie. Science and math and engineering and technology and all these things have as many lies and as many half-truths and as many beliefs based on nothing, beliefs that are based on essentially faith, as anything else does, as any religion does, for example, or any poetry major does, or whatever. You know, there's no real difference between them except that we're, you know, working with the mysteries of the universe, and poets are dealing with the mysteries of whatever they're writing poetry about, and religious people are dealing with the mysteries of, you know, whatever their religion is based on, or whatever. Doesn't give credence or validity to any of them at all. None of them have credence or validity more than the others. And that's not my opinion. That's a plain and simple fact. You can never go into science thinking that it's about fact and truth. It's not. All science is based on belief, and then it's built on that. We believe this is true, and we're going to build on it from there. At the bottom of all science, there are things that we cannot prove, and that we just have to believe are true. And it's as simple as something like the existence of zero. Did you know that zero was invented? Okay, invented by the Phoenicians, okay, when they invented their number system, which we use. Before that, it was the Romans' number system that was dominating the world. The Romans don't have a symbol or an idea for zero. They never had anything that even represented zero. They never even thought about zero. They never thought about nothing, right? But we've been using the Persian system for hundreds of years, maybe even 1,000 years or more, probably. And we now believe that zero is something that just exists, that there is such a thing as nothing. But do we have any proof of that? No. We don't. We thought we did for a while because we thought we could prove that there's a vacuum in space, for example, and in that vacuum there's nothing. But there's a lot of evidence that that's not true anymore. A lot of evidence that inside of the vacuum of space there is actually something there. Do we know what it is? No. We're trying to figure it out. Figure out if it really is that way. But that's the goofy thing, that even the simplest thing that we believe to be absolutely true, zero means something. Nothing is a thing that exists. May not. We just believe it. There's no real evidence for it. And that's at the bottom of every science. There are things like that across all of sciences. And all of technology and everything else is based on things we believe, and we go from there. So you need to approach your research this way too, so that you're not making assumptions that one thing is true and one thing is not, or one thing is right and one thing is wrong, or whatever. It's just not a good way to start. But it's extremely common, and it leads to a lot of bad science and a lot of bad research. So my recommendation is that you go somewhere in between when you're doing your research, that you do a broad search, but then you also do a very specific search, maybe several specific searches, maybe several broad searches, and that you kind of skim through things and you say, well, what is it I'm trying to ask? What is the question I'm asking? What is the thing I'm trying to learn about? And go back to that constantly. Always go back to what you're trying to research. Oh yes, I'm trying to research how biomedical engineering affects, the medical field in such and such a way, whatever. You have some specific thing you're looking at, and then go back to your research and do some more research. And go back and forth, just kind of reading and skimming and exploring a little bit. Don't take any notes to start off with. Don't tie yourself down to one particular idea, one particular avenue of research. See what's out there first. Cast a broad net, and then focus a little here and there, and then cast a broad net and focus a little here and there, and see what's out there, because that will start to spark ideas. That will start to spark directions. And after you've done that for maybe a half an hour to an hour, you will start to think in the right direction. You'll start to say, well, I can see that the question I'm trying to ask, I'm going to need to go this direction. I'm going to need to look at these types of sites, because that's where I've kind of found the stuff that seems to be pointing in that direction. And then you can have a properly focused but also properly broad approach to your research. Now, how you take notes and how you do things, that's completely up to you. I don't like writing things with my hands because I did so much of it when I was younger that my hands would cramp up and I hated that feeling. So I have a tendency to do all my research by pasting, cutting and pasting. I'll bring, an entire page of stuff that I found somewhere and I'll paste it into a Word document or something and I'll put a reference on it so I know where it came from so I can reference it later. But then I'll just start cutting and pasting things like that. The downside of doing something like that is if you don't cut enough, you'll lose the context. If you cut too much, you have too much to read from. It's again coming down to too much or too little, too much, too little. And research is almost always this way. There's this balancing between just enough, too much, too little, right? Reminds me of Goldilocks, right? Just right. Anyway, in the book here, they have this little 6 points of research, I suppose. You have I guess they're steps or whatever, categories they call them. But you have this task definition is 1, information seeking strategies 2, location access 3, use of information 4, 5, synthesis, and 6 is evaluation. Not a bad thing to think about. I'm not expecting you to go through each one of these 6 steps in some kind of explicit detail. But it's important to realize that you're going to start off, they're starting off with definition, strategies, and location. Those first 3 things are more about planning to research than they are actually doing research. They're more about what is it that I'm trying to research, where am I going to find it, how am I going to go about it, right? And then so that's about half of your approach right there is planning for it. And that's what I was talking about when I said, well, just kind of look around, see what's out there, but keep going back to your question so you remember what your question is. Get a feel for things first. Start to make some plans. And then the use of the information is when you start taking notes, when you start trying to put them together. Synthesis and evaluation is about essentially putting together a paper, actually making that paper happen. Now, how are we going to practice something like this? I think the best way to practice doing research is to just do it. And we've done it a little bit with your first presentation. But I want to add some things to this as well, and that is the idea of outlining. When it comes, when you've got your research, when you've got all your information, you're trying to put something together, I think outlining is an extremely useful tool. How many of you make an outline every time you write a paper, every time you make a presentation? How many of you actually make an outline? Kind of. Okay, I would recommend that you learn how to make an outline. And, well, I'm going to teach you how to make an outline. But I would recommend you learn it and you use it regularly. Let's find a good here. Changing habits for sustainable living. Here's a classic. How to create a formal outline. Let's look at this really quick. Oops. Can't really read that. Okay. Let's try this one. Any better? That's not too bad. Okay, so here they have an outline for a book comparison. And they're starting off the top with with a title essentially for this, and that's not absolutely necessary. But if you already know what your title wants to be, or close to what you want it to be, then you can go ahead and put it up there. But you should definitely have a bit of an explanation before you even start outlining. So here they say, explain similarities and difference between books and possibly between audiences. So that's, you know, a fairly good explanation. That explanation can be anywhere from one sentence to a paragraph or two. In engineering and science, we usually call this the abstract. When you're completely done with your paper or your presentation, you will have this paragraph or two at the beginning. But as an abstract, it's kind of like an overview. This is what this paper is about, and it gives you the basic background, basic kind of meat of what's going on, and also the basic conclusions. But very cursory. It doesn't give any real details. So usually less than 2 paragraphs. Usually not more than 1 paragraph, in fact. But sometimes it can be a little bit more. And usually not less than 2 sentences or so. 2 or 3 sentences. But that would be our abstract. And then here they've given just a quick kind of almost like a table of contents. You know, you have 5 different Roman numerals, and it tells that there's an introduction to controversy, summaries of the battle, similarities. So it gives you each of the sections, and then they go into each section. Now, why do I like outlines? Because they're eminently designed for organization. They're great for organizing things, especially information. But they almost lead directly into what you're doing. So if you've started an outline and you keep adding to it, you keep expanding it, eventually your paper will be written. It'll be done. Because all you'll do is transfer the outline, you make the outline into complete sentences, and done. And that's all there is to it. That's kind of the idea, if you're using an outline correctly. Which means that you're going to have several versions of your outline. And I don't think that you necessarily need to keep each version and name each version. This is my rough draft, this is my second rough draft, third rough draft, whatever else. I don't think so. I think you just keep modifying the same one and keep improving it and changing it and whatever you need to do. But here you can see you have your Roman numeral 1, Introduction to Controversy, and they have 2 subsections under that, and under one of these subsections there's another subsection, right? And you use indenting and different lettering or numbering, depending on what you want to use, to enumerate each one of these sections. And eventually, each one of these sections, each one of these big categories, is going to have, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably not more than about 5 subsections, and each one of the subsections might have, 2 or 3, maybe 4 subsections. But you don't want to have much more than that, because in the end, if you're writing a 2-page paper or a 4-page paper or something like this, these big things are going to represent a paragraph, essentially, in the paper. These things are going to represent sentences or compound sentences, or maybe 2 sentences for each one of these. And these are going to represent the things that you're covering in that sentence, usually, or a couple of sentences. So you break it down, and you're breaking it down and fleshing it out, and you keep adding, and you keep massaging it, you keep changing it, reordering it if you need to, adding to it, subtracting from it, whatever, until you've got it done. Now, does it mean that you start off with 5 of these things and you end with 5? No, you can change the main headings as well. If you decide, oh, this is starting to look, in my third thing here, I've got 9 subheadings, and I don't necessarily want to have, 15, 20 sentences in that paragraph, then maybe I cut it down. But if that's okay, if you're having bigger paragraphs or whatever, then you leave it like that. But making an outline is extremely useful. People get frustrated with them, they get tired of them, but in the end, if you can go from idea or assignment to outline to outline to outline to outline to outline to paper, you will find that it's much easier and much less time consuming than just going directly from idea to writing the paper. Because what happens when you write a paper? What's the most common thing that happens when people go to write a paper? Yeah. What do? You sit down and you say, I don't know what to write. All right, most common thing. I know I have 5 kids, they all do that to me. Right? And I say, you don't have to know what to write, you just have to write. Right? And starting with a outline is a great way to do that. Because you can say, well, I know what I'm supposed to write about, and I know this is supposed to cover this, 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 and this. And so you put those in there, and you start with that. And that will start to get the creative juices flowing. Action makes the mind work. And so if you're doing something with this, your mind will start working. But if you just sit there and stare, inaction makes the mind shut down. It's actually what our brains do. When we're sitting around staring at walls, our brain stares at the wall. That's what it does, and it just shuts down. But if you do something, it will start to crank in. It'll start to crank up and work for you. So make sure you just start doing things, start writing. Now, just because you've made an outline doesn't mean you won't rewrite your paper, doesn't mean you won't need to change the paper, fix the paper, update whatever you need to do to the paper, because rewriting is the most important thing about writing. There's no question about it. If you're a good writer, you will write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite after you've outlined and outlined and outlined and outlined. It's all about repetition. So just get used to that and do it fast. Again, you don't want to waste time doing nothing, so do it quickly. Don't sit around thinking, oh, I can't do this. Right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do an outline. We're going to have, let's see, I can't remember, I don't think they do an outline example in here, so we won't have one to do in here. Let's see. Yeah, they don't have one, so we're going to do one. Let's see. Let's give you the assignment. The assignment will be, and let's go ahead and just put it directly into my open math so that you can get in here. There's our class. There's our class. We're going to call this outline and paper activity. So you have been asked to, let's see, what's something we've all done recently that we can put into an outline on a paper. Describe the process for applying to go to college. Okay? Make an outline. We have, how many words is paper these days? When your English teacher asks you to write a paper, they say 500 words or something like that? 600, 500 words? Let's say 500 words. You have 500 words to use. Make an outline. And should include section. So the way I've described this, subsection. The way I've described this is I want you to include a subsection for every sentence you write in your final paper. That means if your final paper has 50 sentences or whatever, you should have about 50 subsections in your outline. It doesn't have to be exact, but it should be pretty close. There should be no idea that you put into your paper that wasn't first put in your outline in some way. Okay? So start off with the outline. You're going to upload the outline here, and then upload the paper on another one. Okay? You can go ahead and get started with it right now. And then finish it up and turn everything in on.
When is it due?
No, Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Yeah,
2 days or next week?
in 2 days. Your outline should be due in 2 days.
Wanna clarify?
That's. What did you say? I'm sorry.
Wanna clarify? Wanted to clarify.
Oh, just wanted to clarify. Sorry. Oh, that's not right. That didn't work. Yep.
Since we're just working on this, I'm on my laptop. So we get the replays and the
Yep.
Thank you. Hi, Grace, have fun at Waits. Have fun for real, because y'all are doing heavy lately this week. She told me not to even go.
Okay, so that's up on the website. You can go ahead and upload your outline and your paper on this outline and paper activity. And it's ready to go. We will use this paper when we get back on Wednesday to talk about writing styles in technical writing, because again, they're also very different from writing styles that you will learn in English classes. So we will do that again there. For now, we're done, unless anybody has any questions. Do you have any questions about this assignment? If you do, I'll be in my office.